Proclamations.
Okay, I'm good to go.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Common Council of the City of Wausau, September 10th, 2024. It is now 6:30 p.m. and we appear to have a quorum. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could the clerk call the roll, please?
So Phil Cossin, our financial advisor, is here. Phil Cossin, our financial advisor. I marked your presence, but I can look at it during public comment. I'll look at yours during public comment.
Okay, we have 11 voting members present.
Okay, and up next we have a proclamation to present tonight to the Daughters of the American Revolution. We have Jane Johnson in the House with Carol Behrens, and I think we also have a new member. City Attorney Ann Jacobson is a member of that esteemed organization. So here we go. It's a proclamation. Here it is. Whereas the Constitution is founded on fundamental trust in American citizens, and on September 17th, 1787, our constitutional framers signed the U.S. Constitution at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, forging a new government for the United States. And whereas the story of the framing, signing, and adoption of that epical document constitutes one of the most significant chapters in the U.S. history of our country, and whereas the United States Constitution stands as a testament to the tenacity of Americans throughout history to maintain their liberties, freedoms, and inalienable rights. And whereas it is fitting that every American should reflect upon the vision and fortitude of our forebears in creating a charter designed to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and for the fortunate millions who were to follow them as citizens of this nation. And whereas the Congress, by joint resolution, approved on August 2nd, 1956, has requested the President to set aside the week beginning September 17th of each year as Constitution Week, a time for the contemplation of our and commemoration of the historic acts which resulted in the formation of our Constitution. And whereas September 17th marks the 237th anniversary of the Constitution of the United States, and we celebrate this founding charter and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Doug Denny, Mayor of the City of Wausau, do hereby proclaim September 17th to September 23rd, 2024 as Constitution Week in the City of Wausau, State of Wisconsin, and I commend this observance to all citizens and encourage them to demonstrate our commitment to the United States of America and appreciation for the liberty our constitutional framers secured for us. Signed, Doug Denny, Mayor, City of Wausau. If you want, we can get a picture later if you want. See?
Pardon?
You're free to see.
No.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I planned to say a few words, but I don't have to because he read everything that I was going to say. I do just want to mention that the Daughters of American Revolution worked with President Eisenhower to have this set up, this Constitution Week. And it's been our responsibility as members for many years to try and make the public know and be aware of Constitution Week, September 17th, so October 23rd. And thank you, council members and Mr. Mayor, for having us as part of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Carol. All right, I have two more proclamations that we won't be reading, but we will be entering into the record. One is the Sunday I attended and read this to 450 former employees or retirees and current employees of Graphic Packaging celebrating their 75th anniversary doing business here in Wausau. And then up next, we do have in the packet is the proclamation designating International Wisconsin American Ginseng Month. It is also in, and I'll be reading this to the Ginseng Board on Friday, as well as the Taiwanese General Council in observation of Sioux Ginseng International, Inc. 50th anniversary, another longstanding company in the city. Up next, public comment for pre-registered citizens. We have two. Jay Caldwell.
Hi, I'm Jay Caldwell, 3422 Horseshoe Spring Road in Wausau, and thanks for this opportunity to speak with you. I was a member of the Solar Array Task Force that made a recommendation for a solar array for the drinking water plant in Wausau. And we made this design in much consultation with neighbors so that it was an array that would fit with the neighborhood. And we found from our feasibility research that it's likely that millions of dollars would be saved in electrical power purchases over the lifetime of the array. And we would reduce tens of thousands of dollars of CO2, or tens of thousands of tons of CO2 being emitted into the atmosphere. It's probably the largest single thing any one of us could do to make that sort of change. And also, this would be the foundation of resilience in our water supply. The electrical industry is worried about the Midwest region in terms of stability of the electric grid as some of the old coal plants are taken offline. And if we don't have water, we don't have a city. And this would be one building block in being able to have a continuous drinking water supply. This, more than anything, is, I think, probably is inflation insurance. WPS has requested an 8.7% increase in fees next year and a 4.9% in the following year. The financial projections that we received were based on a 3.5% inflation in electric rates, and we're blowing way past that in the near term. So our savings numbers may even be pretty conservative. The Inflation Reduction Act is an important part of this thing. We think at least 30% of the project can be funded by the Inflation Reduction Act, maybe as high as 70%. And so there's a lot of work to do there to make sure that we do qualify for those dollars. And with the election coming up this fall, there may be a real sunset on those dollars because the Republican administration may change that down the road. And so what I'm advocating for is that we get moving on this, that we schedule a bid process and see if we can get dollars committed just as soon as we can. So there's time, there's lots of work to do and not a lot of time to do it in. The IRA is very complicated, and there's just a huge benefit that would be possible for the city of Wausau. And I sent you all a letter with lots of detail. I hope you got that. And thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Up next is Judy Lombard.
I'm Judy Lombard, 149988 Skylark Lane. That's a Rib Mountain address, but I've been to these meetings before, and my interest in the topic of the Humane Program comes from my personal interest in animals, but also the fact that I am the retired manager of our Humane Society. I retired in 2008. But I've attended most of these meetings, I think, that referred to the Humane Program, and I was really disappointed to find out that the last meeting that the program had never actually been staffed the way it was originally meant to be staffed. And I'm hoping tonight, when you vote on your amendment, that you will give this program another chance. I think you'll find that if it's properly staffed, I don't know where the ball got dropped. I don't know why it didn't have the staffing it was originally lined out to have. But I do believe that if you had that original staffing level, that you would see your licensing fees closer to what you want them to be, and your call response. I mean, it just makes sense that if you have more staffing, you're going to get the results you're really looking for. At earlier meetings, I heard a lot about giving the citizens of Wausau the best humane program possible. I think you can do this if you pass this amendment and try it for a year and see what extra actual dedicated staffing can do to this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Anyone else desiring to speak? All right, we have a presentation tonight, a report from Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Committee on current initiatives. Looks like Mary Clues is here.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Mary.
Hello. It's so good to be with you here tonight. Thank you for taking time to hear from our committee, the Sustainability, Energy, and Environment Committee. I'm Mary Clues, current chair and sometimes de facto historian, because I believe I've been on the committee since it's almost its inception during Mayor Melky's term. We spend our meeting time focused on being a support to the council and making the city a comfortable home for its residents. I'd like to acknowledge our alderperson member, Carol Lukens. So glad to have her on the committee. Thank you for connecting us to the council. I appreciate the effort the council and mayor put into managing the incredible number of decisions you need to make about tiny tasks, big initiatives, and really keeping this place humming it's a very complicated thing to keep humming. But I see you working to balance the immediate needs with long-term health of the community. And this is the definition of sustainability. Meeting the needs of current residents without jeopardizing the success of future generations. So this definition informs the work of the committee. We do this with a long-term perspective, long time, we're looking far into the future, as well as a broad view, meaning we're flying at about 30,000 feet, so we want to be aware of the interconnectedness of the actions that we all take. What you have in front of you in your packet, at least, maybe you don't have it out right there, but there is a report from the committee that I'm not going to read from. I just want to bring up some highlights. One thing at the top, responding to the City Council Environmental Justice Resolution, the Sustainability Committee refers alders to the EPA's Environmental Justice Screen Tool, and you should have gotten a report in April that would have given you an overview of some of the statistics and data that's available there. Also, the committee has found partnerships to streamline our search for resources to do our work. Joining the Green Tier Legacy Communities provides us with a dashboard to track our progress, but also connections to other like-minded communities that want to look far into the future. We've also more recently joined the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition, and this allows our city staff to be aware of best practices and learn from the experience of others, as well as learn about additional resources. Also, I'm pleased to report that the committee can change when we learn. You may have remembered No Mow May. Well, we have evolved that to Slow Mo Summer because we've learned more about really what we can do to try to support the health of our pollinators. And believe me, none of us are getting anywhere without pollinators. So please stay tuned for the next newsletter where we will highlight the next the example of our community outreach and reaching to the citizens. And I'm going to make the first correction to our report because the fall promotion will be leave your leaves, and we forgot to put the rest of the sentence into our report. We're promoting the advantages of using leaves as a resource in your own yard.
Otherwise, let's see, moving on, we continue to seek ways to create action around the council's greenhouse gas reduction resolution passed in 2023. We remember then Alder Dinney joined us to encourage us to make sure it didn't just sit on a shelf. It wasn't one of those things we wanted to just make a proclamation and then sit back. So what we'll admit that we have run into challenges. The baseline data that we are seeking to really, that was the first step, is set a baseline or learn about our baseline. The data is not exactly the most accessible or digestible. So we're working on that. And so we found some funds to create an energy plan, which should help us move things forward, but we're also not willing to stand still. We have a plan to meet with department directors to find out what their best ideas are, that we can make some progress, even in the meanwhile, before we have our baseline. And I want to draw your attention then to the third page of the report. This gives you a little bit of some of the data we have been able to pull up, if you have that paper in front of you. The top graph on page 3 in the report gives an estimate of the total energy use from WPS, so the utility. It's not necessarily all the energy the city uses, because obviously there's gasoline that's put in cars and trucks and things like that. But through WPS, we've learned this, and then all of these energy figures have been translated into values in therms, which is a more standardized energy unit. Interestingly, though, we look at this and it's like, well, that's great. Yet, how do we analyze why we see some of those fluctuations? There's all kinds of factors that can change our energy use. And so we really want to dig more into the why. What has the greatest impact when we make a change in policies and procedures, and do more of what works? So that's our goal. With that, let's drill down a little bit further with the second graph on the bottom part of the page. And let's start on the right. It's a little more straightforward in a way, because it has to do with the street lamps, and the city's been smart enough to take advantage of some programs that help us there, because generally all things are equal, because the light is not changed. Our daylight goes up and down the same amount as it did over those years. But we're taking advantage of replacing street lamps with LEDs, which take much less electricity, so we can light our streets with less energy use. Very straightforward. In the middle, we see around one building, the police department building, it's seen as like it's very steady. That's great. We can consider a baseline, and when we make a change, we can track that and actually see how we're making a difference. The other one, though, with the city building at City Hall, it's a little confusing to me, at least, because I look at that and I think 2021, maybe we were still having some pandemic effect. Shouldn't we have had less energy use in the building because things were very restricted? But yet it seems higher than the others. So we don't have a way to really track what happened there. Why are we seeing less energy use generally? But that leads us to the question of, how do we figure out what's going on with these trends? We also want to track sources for our energy, because we're seeking clean use of energy, or clean sources of energy. And right now, we really don't know how that energy is being generated. And we want to keep moving away from fossil fuels and toward clean energy sources. This is a reason that we are supporting the solar array for the water treatment plant. And again, another correction on the report, it says the wastewater plant. We know it's the water treatment plant for our drinking water. We've also heard from the public with support on that. So overall, though, we have these questions, and really, we'll say we don't have the capacity to dig deep into them. Our goal would be to grasp where we stand in order to build another platform from where we are, steady, but not locked in, a flexible platform based on the savings that we can realize from using different sources of energy, and that really will have some money savings that we can make some other choices to build the next platform that's going to be even closer to our goal. So really, we should need to understand that we can take advantage in being flexible, that we'll have even different knowledge and better technology going forward that we can't even anticipate today. To that end, the committee is working toward a recommendation for a sustainability manager position to really be in charge of tracking this and focusing this information and being able to dig deep into the data. There's just a couple of things I want to leave you with as we wrap up. One is, please consider nominating individuals, organizations, and companies for the sustainability awards. The intention, we have only highlighted the most recent recipient, which is good news. They're doing fantastic things over at their facility. But our intention is really to create more can-do attitude, really by learning from each other, by lifting up and publicizing the successes that we have in our community beyond the city functions. Also, the committee is planning to create a work plan. So please give us your input, either through our council member, Carol Lukens, or more directly. We can't do it all, we realize that, and we look forward to choosing priorities that will really help us move forward in order to meet the needs of our current community, at the same time building a community for generations to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions for Mary?
Stay in touch.
Good report, thank you. We'll leave the lights on for you, or maybe we won't. All right, up next, we have the consent agenda, and we had two items we're going to be pulling. So the consent agenda item 240904, a joint resolution for additional staff on Waterworks will be pulled. And then the very next one, 991104 from Finance, a resolution amending the procurement policy that is actually going to be pulled entirely. And it'll come back next week or next time to fix up some of the verbiage that we agreed on. Anything else? Okay, I would have a motion from Watson, second from Neal. Any other discussion? Seeing none.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 10-1.
All right, up next, we're going to take that item from the joint resolution that we pulled from the consent agenda. It would be 240904, HR and Waterworks. It's a joint resolution approving additional staff at Waterworks. It was approved 4-0 at HR, 4-0 at Waterworks. I have a motion from Rasmussen. And a second from Watson. Do we have any discussion? Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is for you, is how do you feel about adding 3 additional employees here and putting more on a water budget when we're looking at, taking back some money from the pilot program and such? And quite honestly, I haven't seen enough evidence to support putting 3 employees on here when we're supposed to, when we just replaced I'm going to say, an 80-year-old facility, which probably takes more manpower with a state-of-the-art facility that's basically probably run by computers. And I haven't toured the plant or anything, but just as from a person on the outside looking in, I don't see where the extra 3 employees are necessary. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you that it went through the normal process, going through HR, through Waterworks. That was the recommendation. If you've got specific questions on what either Scott Bors or Mr. Lindman is looking for, I mean, you can certainly ask those questions.
I'm good. I asked you the question because I know you're the one you're the money conscious mayor now and stuff, and I'm just wanted your input along. If Mr. Lindman and Mr. Bowers wants to come up and answer my question, they're more than welcome to. Thank you.
Directors have guidance on the budget, so we will cross those bridges when they come to it. This has been in the works for a number of months. I think it might have even been, it came originally prior to me even being elected. So we can get into the who's, what's, when's, where when this happened, Lou, but suffice it to say, ultimately the decision is council's on all things finance and HR.
Thank you.
Alder Tierney.
I guess I'm going to have some questions for Mr. Lindman. I was not an elected official at the time this was going through. One of my questions when looking at the information that you had, that is in here from Baker Tilly, when looking at the wastewater total staffing graph, you've got Wausau, Beloit, Fond du Lac, Sun Prairie, West Bend. These comparables are mostly in the southern part of the state where the cost of living is much higher in the southern part of the state. And I'm just wondering if you know why they didn't do more comparables with people, or with cities, or I should say, that are really more of a comparison to us, like Stevens Point, Green Bay, Appleton, Oshkosh, that don't have these more extreme cost of living as the southern part of the state does.
Yeah, the cities that were looked at had very similar treatment that we have here. So that's both on the wastewater and water side. So we weren't specifically looking at just cities that maybe comparable size or maybe closer to our area. We were looking at facilities from a staffing standpoint on typically what's needed and the types of treatment and collection system and the sophistication that we have.
Okay, but one of these comparisons were wages that I looked at, and you know, when you look at the comparisons, there always seems to be, you know, you're looking at an average, but there always seems to be, you know, one of the comparisons that really throws a wrench in those comparisons. I'm going to get to that page here to try to explain what I'm talking about. There's just a lot of information from the report. So what I was seeing was, it looks like there was, you know, a few that were closer to us when it comes to the finance side of it. But they were highlighting like supervisors, well, I should say superintendent, so on and so forth, for the wages. And again, there's Fond du Lac, West Bend, and there, you know, quite a bit substantially more. I see, you know, Manitowoc is less. And so I was just, again, wondering why it wasn't more local. That they were, for wages, I think local
Right.
would be huge, because the cost of living would be similar.
Right, but we were looking at what the sophistication of the treatment was, and this request tonight is just adding staff. This was just additional work that Baker Tilly did for us as a comparison to wages, but that's not what this ask is tonight. This ask is just for adding staff. Our staff is classified within the pay scale that we have right now. So there's no changes to staffing wages or anything related to this request.
Okay, and I guess my final question is, when we were talking about new meters and, you know, who is going to handle the workload on that, and the question was asked if we were going to need more staffing to do that, and the answer was no, that we can handle it with what we have, but yet we're getting asked to add additional staff to Waterworks, so I guess I'm not understanding that.
Right, so, yeah, and I would go back, when we started looking at putting the new facilities in place, right, upgrading the wastewater and putting the new water treatment facility in place, our design engineers looked at this as well, and they said, you're going to have to increase staffing with the complexities that you're putting in, right? We're adding treatment processes, and we're doing a lot of complexities with the facilities that we have. There is automation that's related to them, but there's also a lot of sophistication along with the new regulations that are coming into play. And so, so what I will say is that what Scott said was, he said, in order to do the meters, we'll just have to reprioritize our work, right? And so we will take staff off of other jobs and put them towards meters, because that would be a high priority for us, right? To start generating the revenue that we should be generating, because some people are not paying their full share for water. But that will create issues down the road with meeting regulations and meeting our requirements with both the DNR and the EPA. So we'll have to balance that.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Eric, I'm glad you're up there because I was going to call on you as well. And I guess my point is, and I think you just started to make my point at the end of your comment, was we have a duty to properly staff that facility and the wastewater facility per DNR requirements. And it seems to me that as we've sat through a number of our processes in trying to upgrade both plants, that back even an administration or two ago, we were already the subject of concern for staffing levels, not only for the new plant, but the old one. I mean, we were staffing at a minimum level, and there was concern from the Water Commission even back then that at some point we would end up under orders to get staffed properly. Now we've added complexities to the treatment and testing, which gives us way better water, but we have not staffed up even to meet those concerns from, a term or two ago. We're still in that boat, right? So
Yes.
this starts to address that deficiency.
Correct.
Where, I mean, we pay them at the pay rate that we pay everyone else that starts down there, but it's not even so much about, it's not about a wage study, it's about properly meeting the needs of the facility and the community. And if we are in violation then of what those minimum or recommended staffing levels are for long enough, we are then subject to penalties at some point. Is that,
Correct, yeah.
there was a consequence that was,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And it's my understanding that the city was in non-compliance on the wastewater side, and at one point in the past, and the DNR would not allow, or the state would not allow any new connection to the wastewater facility until those non-compliance issues were addressed. So development basically had to stop. I think one of the things that we're continuing to look at is the future of regulations, and they are still continuing to trickle down. So with the new lead and copper rule, the disinfection byproducts rule that's being revised, we have a number of other items. We're waiting on our new wastewater discharge permit to come in with our new limits for phosphorus, nutrients, and other things, which is the reason we did these upgrades, right, to get ahead of those regulations. And so in order for us to properly treat, maintain, and manage these facilities, not just the treatment facilities, but also on the street as well, the collection system, the distribution system. These are complex facilities that need to be managed. And so we put the upgrades in, and now we want to make sure that they're maintained properly to get the longest, best use out of those facilities.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, Terry.
I think a couple of my questions have been answered, but there is the assumption that because it's a new high-tech facility, you need less staff. Is that true or is that not true? And the second question I would have is, are we in non-compliance on any of the staffing issues at this point?
Right. So to your first question, yeah, unfortunately, that's not true. We did put a lot of things in place, right, to help with manage the plant and run the plant in automation standpoint. But there's stuff that's going on every day that our staff just can't keep up with, right? Just general maintenance of the facility, the increased treatments, the increased amount of testing that we're doing, the lab time that we have to be in every day, the reporting to the DNR, all of those things. And then on the collection system side and on the distribution side, we have all of those same operations and maintenance issues that we've had before. So, and they're getting more complicated and more legislation is coming down, more reporting is required. So, yeah. And what was the second question again, Terry?
Lisa had mentioned something about being in compliance or
Oh,
non-compliance.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, right now, we are in compliance with everything, both on the wastewater side with our discharge permit, with our treatments. We are waiting on a few things from the DNR to determine if we have to do other things, but to your point, yeah, we are in full compliance right now on both the water and wastewater.
And do you anticipate it to remain that way, or you talk about future regulations and so forth? Are you looking into the future, or do you think we can remain in compliance for a while?
Not with the staffing we have.
No?
No, I think we need this staffing. I think it's been a long time coming. I think that with the new regulations coming down, and even with, just to take an example of the new lead testing that we're going to be doing in 2025 that we're going to be required to do, it's going to be double what we've done in the past. So, but we have made some improvements too, you know, to the water system. Our flushing times for our distribution system are less because our water quality is extremely high. We have less sediment in the mains. Our chlorine residuals within the system are much better, so we're wasting a lot less water to maintain those throughout the system. So yeah, I do think that we made a lot of progress, and I do think the systems that we put in place are fantastic. But we do need the staff to properly maintain them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Alder Watson.
So I guess I just had a quick question.
Yep.
I have two questions, but for, I know with like streets and whatnot, there's seasonal shifts. Is there anything with regards to water, you know, because you were talking about like meters being installed? Do you
Right.
need less, less work during the winter time, or is it about the same?
No, it's pretty much all the same, at least, you know, for our operational work, just because these plants run 24/7, 365 days a year, there's no break, right? And so they're constantly running, yeah.
So the amount of labor like devoted to maybe like summer tasks, like replacement of meters or lines or whatever, that doesn't
Right.
impact it? Okay.
Right, so replacement of meters, that happens year-round. We do that year-round. You know, we do have seasonal staff when we can get them for mowing, things like that, you know. And then in the winter, our guys have to do the shoveling and clearing and stuff and work with DPW because we don't have seasonal staff for that, so,
Cool.
yeah.
And then I guess, I don't know, I wonder if this is premature since the budget process is starting in like another month. And this is quite a substantial amount of money just for a like 3 or 4 month period. Is this something that could just be delayed and considered with the budget? I guess that's my question. Because if something doesn't work with the budget and these can't be sustained when they need to be, like we're employing 3 new people and then, you know, have to eliminate them. So I guess
Right.
like, is there an urgent urgency since we are in compliance? Like, couldn't
Right.
we wait until the budget process?
I mean, we certainly can. Just from a budget standpoint, though, I mean, the information that Ellers had come forward with the commission and the finance agenda, you know, their numbers incorporated these 3 staff members moving forward, you know. And I know that the study asked or stated that we should have more, but we're trying to, you know, kind of step this in and evaluate it on an annual basis to see how this goes and get them trained up before.
And I guess
Yeah.
my question would be like, what is and I don't know if I can ask you, Mayor, but the direction for, I know you were sort of asking a few departments maybe to do the zero-based budgeting. Is it going to be a larger, like, what's sort of the ask for the rest of the areas? Is it just, you know, cost to continue plus, or?
Well, if we get our software working, we will know here soon. But I will tell you that the guidance was no supplementals, no supplementals this year. So the ask is for up to 2.5% reductions, and they will be presented in a menu format to you, and up to 2.5 5% revenue enhancements that'll be in a menu format for you. I will say in the course of this discussion, these go back to the previous Water Commission and the previous HR committees, previous council. So these have been on the docket for a number of years. And we've asked them to slow that roll. So what we did at the last Water Commission is we approved these over 3 years. So rather than bring them in all at one time, minimize the impact on the budget, is to bring them in over 3 years. So that's something we've looked at. As far as, I would have to defer to Mary Ann as far as where we had budgeted this relative to 25 or not.
So we do not have it in the 25 budget yet because we were waiting to see what the results of tonight's meeting were.
So it would, I mean, so what the water pitch would be to the budget, if we approve it tonight, it would include these as sort of cost to continue.
Yes.
And they'd already be rolled in.
Yes,
So instead of making the decision maybe in a month or so.
right.
Okay.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. With the format of the budget workshops coming in October, as the Finance Committee starts to step through the pieces of the 2025 budget, I think it makes sense that we would move this forward, put this issue to rest. That then allows them to factor in that expense in the draft budget that they receive right off the top, and then allows them to prioritize things. You know, if they're not going to have supplements this year, that does take some pressure off of them as far as additional needs within the departments that will will have to wait. So I do think that there is some risk to us in not gearing up for these future requirements and staffing this facility properly. I can recall hearing from at least the last two water commissions about the fact that we are in compliance right now, but we are walking a fine line. And, you know, we could just as easily be out of compliance and then there we sit. So, you know, if we get ourselves in a situation where we're under orders from the DNR, that is not a place where a public water utility wants to find itself. And I think it would be proactive of us to dispense with this now so that it could be factored into those budget projections right away on the front end. And that gives the Finance Committee maximum time to get that all rolled in for next year. And I think stepping them in over a span of years makes sense. And, you know, I think that this really is the time for us to solve this. Thank you.
Alder Tierney.
Actually, my spiel was going to be the same as what Alder Rasmussen said. I was going to propose that we wait and get this into the budgets instead of having to do it right now. So I guess I really have nothing more to add.
Thank you. Alder Watson.
I guess I also have a question. So it is going to add the staff slowly over 3 years.
That's a pros to evaluate it every year to see how, as we bring staff on, you know, with our duties, with the legislation that's coming down, what actually comes down, you know, and see how that plays in with our operations.
So we are, though, going to add 3 staff now.
That's the proposal.
Okay.
2 at wastewater and 1 at water.
And so then that amping up over the 3 years, ideally, you're going to have more people added over the next 3 years?
Yeah, yeah, they would come every year if needed.
Like an
Yeah.
extra 3 or something?
Yeah.
All right.
You're going to have plenty of opportunities to make some hard decisions, trust me. Right, Mary Ann? Oh, we have one more here. Alder Tierney, still there?
I am. So Eric, as these additional staff would, you know, you're asking for the 3 right now, and then based upon what legislation rolls down, there could be more. Would that be a whole new ask of the HR committee and the
Yes.
council? Okay.
Yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-3.
Thank you.
All right, up next is the mayor's appointments, file 240902.
Nope. It just pulled up the item.
Oh, stand by, we're dispensing with the other item.
There we go.
Got it? Now we're ready for a motion on the mayor's appointments. Motion from Martin, second by Hanky. Any discussion? Seeing none?
You may begin voting. Motion passes 11-0.
All right, up next is file number 240803 from the Economic Development Department, Economic Development Committee, resolution for the authorization of the American Rescue Plan Act beneficiary agreement and attestation with the Wausau Community Development Authority, and that passed ED 4-1. I would entertain a motion from Hanky, second by Watson. Comments, questions, requests to speak? Seeing none?
Okay, you may begin voting. Motion passes 10-1.
All right, up next is file number 240813, a joint resolution from Public Health and Safety, HR, and I believe we put finance on there. Joint resolution recommending approval of the proposed restructuring of the animal control program within the Wausau Police Department. And it was approved 4-1 in Public Health and Safety, 3-2 in HR. And then the finance resolution was also 3-2 on the budget portion of that for the end of the year. And I have a motion from Larson. And no second.
Now we have a second.
We have a second from Alder Rasmussen. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to, after examining and talking with Ann Jacobson, go with her amended version instead of mine, because I believe hers is more legally fit, and it serves its same purpose. So I don't know if that needs to be a motion or, but it basically says the same thing in different wording, so.
So the parliamentarian can help us out here. We're going to need then the corrected version with a motion and a second on the amendment. Correct.
Did we not take a second on his amendment on August 19th, clerk, or not?
We did.
I believe we did.
We did take a second. We did not take a vote.
Correct.
So then do we need to amend the amendment at this point?
I don't believe so unless anybody has any objection to the way I modified his wording. I mean, we literally translated his proposed amendment made on the floor, went back through the tape and the minutes and prepared that, and then I went through to catch other things and kind of modify what I thought he was proposing to make it consistent. So I think
Correct.
it's still materially the same amendment. Unless anyone has any objections, I think you could move forward on the first and second to amend it, done on August 19th, and continue discussion.
Okay, do we need to read this in so we're not confused? So stand by. We
Yeah,
have a
that might be a
motion
good
and a
idea.
second on the amendment. And to clarify what that amendment is, can you read that? Or do we?
The amendment.
Yep. Is it this one? Okay, it's in the packet. It's rather long.
It's also in our email that we got today.
That one has the changes on top of each other on a compare version, and it's a little harder to read, but if you want to pass that down to Caitlin, please, the clerk, that's the one that was in the packet.
So do you want me to read the The ones in red and blue. Changes. Okay, so from the original Resolution 24-0813 presented at the August 19th meeting, we would be adding in the amendment would be adding in the seventh whereas clause, the proposed model to use 1 full-time humane officer and 2 part-time non-sworn officers to allow up to 60 hours per week of animal control services, which would include evening and weekend shifts for 1 year, and then review data. And then 3 whereas clauses down from there. The proposed model, and we strike out, is a budget-neutral restructure, since it no longer is. And then in the next whereas clause, adding in whereas the proposed model would continue for 1 year, at which time a review of this model for delivery of animal control services would be reviewed, and then striking out the remainder of that whereas clause. And then on to the last page, adding in a whereas clause, your action on the previous month. So whereas on August 19th, 2024, the Common Council voted 8-2 to postpone to the next regular council meeting scheduled for September 10th, 2024, an amended version of the resolution under consideration and to send it to the Finance Committee on August 27th, 2024. And then and the now therefore be it resolved, it would read by the Common Council of the City of Wausau that the current animal control program will continue to operate for 1 year with a full-time humane officer and 2 part-time non-sworn officers for up to 60 hours per week of animal control services to include evenings and weekends, as opposed to using a single employee to provide 40 hours of services during business hours.
Thank you. I'd just like to go on and add to that, you know.
Stand by. We've got that read in.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So are we going to take more further clarification on this? When we've, well, does anyone, I guess I would ask. Yeah. Well, I think we should open it up for discussion at this point, and since
Well-
we've got a lot of staff work into this, Alder Larson, so if we need to make further changes, we'll get to that.
I understand, but I still have the floor. I guess.
The chair recognizes Alder Rasmussen. We've got a motion and a second, and we've read in the city attorney's interpretation. And if we need to, we have the opportunity to make another amendment if we don't like it. But at this point, we have a motion and a second, and Alder Rasmussen is up first.
My phone says I have the floor.
Help me out here.
Okay, thank you. So the version that we have on the floor right now is the one that's amended that Caitlin had just read in. If this, because it's amended, if this measure fails, does that put us back to the original proposal that was in the packets last meeting, which then retools the service to be provided by trained CSOs only?
If this amendment fails, barring another amendment, we would be at the original resolution / motion as presented by,
Like 2 weeks ago.
correct, prior
Okay.
to the amendment.
Okay, and so here's my thought, and it pains me to spend more money on this. The whole reason we are here talking about this is because in the last term, the Finance Committee asked for a study of this program to determine if it was successful and efficient. We determined that it was not, and they brought us a proposal for efficiencies and better service. And, you know, in the research of all of this, I've had discussions with a number of our staff, And for a good portion of this year, I don't know if anyone knows this, including the community, our full-time humane officer has not been on the streets providing services to this community. Patrol and the CSOs have already been doing it for an extended period of time. And but for this research we asked for, no one noticed. Like, service wasn't faltering. They were doing a good job. They were getting the job done for the citizens and for the animals. So it pains me now to come back and look to not only retain, but add more staff and add more cost. And the reason this thing didn't fly the way everyone thought it should have in 2012 with all these extra CSOs that were proposed is because that plan by design was designed to serve more than 2 municipalities, and it never grew to that point. There was no plan in the initial offering of the Humane Program to add a whole bunch of CSOs to support that full-time employee. The plan was to roll this thing out to other municipalities, perhaps countywide. And that never happened. So there was not a need to add a whole bunch of CSOs to support that full-timer. It was not that the plan was set up to fail or wasn't properly enacted. So I have a hard time with this. I'm voting against this amended plan because it doesn't save any money. In fact, it costs way more. And the service we've been getting to this point, in the absence of that full-timer, has been sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Neal.
Thank you. Well, this amended proposal here that we're talking about right now lists no fiscal impact at all. So I'm assuming what? Is it supposed to be the 21,603 from the other version that we have in front of us? Because this one has no fiscal impact indicated. But of course, there would be fiscal impact. I'm of a mind that, our chief has a job to run a department, to manage staff, to manage budgets, and to ensure that services are delivered. Not only that, but, we are hearing about budgeting constraints or limitations that will be faced, this coming round of budgeting, and the chief will have to deal with that as well. So shoehorning in something like this at this time seems kind of counterintuitive to me, and I really cannot support this, and I would go back to the previous proposal as presented by the chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, the fiscal impact is 21,603, and that was determined at the Finance Committee.
Just a quick question. That was this year only, though, right?
That's
It's just for the rest
For
of...
the remainder, and it specifically says, resolution is approved, if this amendment is approved, it'd be 21,603, will be transferred and reserved for 2 non-sworn part-time.
Sorry.
Four
So
months
4
of
months,
September
September
through December.
through December.
Would that require then a supermajority vote? Is this like a budgetary amendment, so?
Oh, good question. The amendment would not, but if it was amended, then the amended motion
Correct.
would require 2/3.
Because it will include the budget modification that went to Finance August 27th after the amendment was made on August 19th.
Alder McElhaney.
Okay. I'm going to just reiterate just a little bit of what Alder Rasmussen said. I was in the room when this whole program was vetted out, and it was definitely the CSO addition was absolutely if the program was growing. They expected, you can see this in the resolution in this packet, it was outreach to area municipalities has generated support for a county-wide animal control program. And then it says how this program, by adding other employees, would meet the service level demands of the urban and rural areas of the county. What has happened is instead of growing, we're contracting. Because of the fact that when this was done, I was on the subcommittee at this point, and how we got the council to buy in was this was an enterprise fund. It was to be paid for by increased compliance and increased license fees.
And that's the reason. And so the idea was to expand it to all over the county. That never happened. We didn't get buy-in, and actually we lost Everest Metro. My second point is last budget season, we had a robust conversation within the city council about process in adding employees. And I see that that process is not being followed by an amendment being placed on council to add 2 CSOs, which is not budget neutral. It is budget, there needs to be a budget mod. This amendment did not go through HR, did not go through the HR director, as we have raked department heads over the coals last budget season of following our process. So I'm disappointed that we are not going through the process that we had decided. In actuality, that discussion, that robust discussion about process, brought the city attorney to every committee to go through our scope of duties and to clarify what our duties in each committee was. So it was not an aside. My third thing is, if I have a question for Chief Barnes. Being that I was here when this was started and we hope to grow it, and I remember going down, there was Dan Guild was there at Weston, and we were trying to get them to come along with us. Can you tell us why they did not renew our contract with them?
Well, I think it's twofold. One, they struggled with a period of time where they were not receiving services because we didn't have a humane officer available to go down and do services. Now, I think it's appropriate to clarify that our humane officer was on approved leave during that period of time. So in the defense of that, and then secondarily, Everest Metro also during that period of time merged with Rothschild Police Department, and their desire to continue to pay for that service as part of their new combined department went away.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see an option to grow this back to the Weston area. I don't see a need. I'm not going to support this because process wasn't done. I'm going to go with Alder Neal. This is going to cost the city of Wausau $21,000+ just for 4 months. We haven't even heard the budget mod for the entire year of 2025. And I have gotten a clear message from my residents in my 2 neighborhood meetings and people that have called saying District 6 has a ton of animals. Let me clue you in. I have animals. And they want the animal control program, but they trust in the police department. They trust in what is happening. And they said, we don't want to spend extra money for anything. We cannot afford it. So I'm not going to be supporting this amendment, and I will be supporting the original if that comes to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why I put this amendment out there was because of a couple different reasons. Why wasn't the 2012 agreement ever initiated as was supposed to be, as the citizen came up and spoke? And secondly, I've gotten pulled both ways on this, and I feel that the need for a full-time, experienced humane officer. If my dog were to get loose or something, I certainly would want somebody with experience to help along with this. And thirdly, I also see, as I've spoke before, some internal conflict here, and I don't. maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I'm going to spit it out. I can't see rewarding the police department for something that should have been taken care of internally. And I believe that this,
Yeah, I think you're right. You're over the line there, Alder Larson.
all right, well, then I'll retract that statement. But I will be supporting it because I do feel the need for a full-time humane officer. At the last meeting we were at, the chief said he has many people in line waiting to step up for this opportunity. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Martins.
Okay, thank you. I did not support this, the budgetary aspect of this amendment in finance. I didn't support this when the amendment came up at the last council meeting, and today also, this evening, I'm not going to support this. I find with the amendment, there are several deficiencies. We're asking for a full-time humane officer and up to 2 non-sworn officers for up to 60 hours per week, which is, to make that work, I don't know if there's going to be how that staffing change is going to work, but it feels like there's deficiencies in how that staffing is going to happen. For the next is to operate for 1 full year and to review the data. During the meeting, the finance meeting, the chief indicated that if something like this was going to happen for an entire year, it should happen January to January or January to December instead of September to whenever. And then finally, just the $21,000 that we analyzed in finance was to keep the program running through the end of this year. We don't know what it's going to cost next year to keep through 2025 to keep this program running. We do know that we're already sitting at a $17,000 deficiency with the current humane officer position because that's the loss of funding from the Village of Weston. To add the non-sworn positions for 2025 will be however more thousands of dollars above and beyond that. So it's I see this as totally unfunded, and I think that the original resolution for 3 non-sworn officers for 60 hours a week fit into the budgetary criteria that the department had to work with, and I will support the original motion, but I'm not going to support the amendment.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For me, this amendment represents more than a financial issue. I know some of our alders say that they haven't, their residents and constituents have not expressed one way or the other whether they care or don't care who does this. I have received only one person has said to me, I think the police should take care of this. Every other person that has come to me and that I have observed in the media, which is a critical way for our residents to express themselves, have overwhelmingly, as far as I could see, said that they want a humane officer position. We also have heard from our local experts, from veterinarians, from vet techs, from people who manage veterinary hospitals. We have heard from a national foundation that manages and looks out for animal welfare, that having a humane officer position is critical. And they say that because of the education and experience that comes with any specialty. I have concerns, not that the police department can't do an adequate job, but I have concerns that there won't be the kind of specialization that is required. When I have a pet, that pet isn't just an animal that's to be taken care of. That's a member of my family. And at one of our meetings, I heard one of our alders say, talk about her fur babies and how important they are to her. I believe this is more than a financial issue for our city. This is an issue about taking care of and observing the opinions of experts who are involved in animal welfare. I am going to support this amendment. I think it's critically important that we have a specialized person in this field, so that's what my intention is.
Thank you. Alder Watson.
So I had a question about the fiscal impact. So I was looking at like page, I think it's 124, and you mentioned that to employ the humane officer and the CSOs would be like 25,644. So the amended one that we're actually voting on has the blue on it, right? And so that takes out the humane officer and just employs the CSOs for the remainder of the year? That's how it sort of differed from how Alder Larson had amended it initially.
Stand by, we'll have to add this up.
I guess I'd have to go back and look at the minutes or listen to the tape to know what actually transpired. If, so it could be a Scribner's error where we should have picked up the 25,000 versus, I don't actually know, I can't recall what finance said when they did their amendment.
Okay.
I can't,
Okay.
sorry, I can't recall.
Okay. And then the reserves, I know this is probably not a good, I mean, it's a question that I have. How much do we have in reserves? So you're saying it's from the reserves?
Yep, so this would be the reserves from the fund itself. Let me look.
So the enterprise fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah. It's no longer considered an enterprise fund. We moved it to a special revenue fund because it wasn't actually funding itself anymore. And our auditors agreed with that assessment. Sorry.
And so this would, I guess, just as a side question while you're looking that up, so this would just be like a Band-Aid for like 4 months, and then depending on the budget process that goes over
Right.
the next 3 or 4, it could change totally
There's about $150,000.
in reserves? Oh, that's,
So would it be appropriate to put an upper limit on that if we're guessing right now on 21 or 25?
Looking at the minutes.
Right. So, I mean, the number of hours is kind of fluid on those positions as far as whether people will actually work them or not.
so
You know,
what-
like, I don't see the $4,000 being like a huge problem.
Okay, so with the reserves, you said there's like 150,000. What else can that be used for? Is it, like, because I know
Well,
sometimes
it would
funds
offset
have,
the loss of the $16,000 of revenue this year, like, it's.
plus the remaining 25 to fund it for the remainder of the year?
Yes, yes.
So we would have plenty without stealing from any other pots, but can that pot be used for anything else within the city,
If-
or is it
well,
sort
you-
of
Council would have the authority to transfer it to.
to any other
another-
fund?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
So it could be utilized, and would that then be like, you know, when the finance committee discusses like the extra, right? After the new year, and how to divvy that up, would that be discussed then? And you could use
You
the
could
100
discuss it during budget time,
Okay.
yes. So, you know, the reserve gets added or subtracted based on the annual results of the fund. So if, for example, we estimate we're going to make, you know, $10,000 in animal licensing and we only make 8, that has a negative impact. Or if the straight cat bill that we get from the Humane Society is more than we estimate, that would have a negative effect. But if we don't spend as much on something else, that would have a positive effect. And it's also like what your budget projection is versus actual in general.
So there are still other debits that need to be made from that fund, like for the Humane Society and other
Oh,
things
yes.
that, so those aren't taken out until near to the end of the year? So the
I
150.
think we do get the bill, let me look here.
I guess I just wondered if the 150,000 is.
Well, that was
is
the
tagged.
balance as of 12/31/2023. I'm
Oh.
sorry, I should have clarified that, at the
Oh.
end of last year.
Okay. So it has, yeah, nothing. Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, rereading this, it appears that the budget could be exceeded by 4,000. So we're looking at 21 plus the 4, so 25,644 would be the real impact.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have paid the animal shelter $46,000 so far this year.
So then, is there a balance of 150 on in there?
At the
beginning of the year.
Beginning of the year, yes.
And now it's zero.
Well, it's not zero.
So we spent 46 of that, so we have 110,000 left, 115,000. That could be committed to other costs that need to pay for our humane program?
Yeah. So definitely, well, each year we're contributing property taxes. So when we look at, and I can see what the actual financial results are, hold on.
Do we want to stick to the confines of this particular amendment through the year? Otherwise, we're looking at another amendment if we're looking at next year.
I guess I was just asking what's in there right now. So if this 25 grand came out, are we negative 25 grand in that fund that would pay for it? Or are we now at 75,000 because we have 110,000 in it?
Right. So far this year, have revenues of 123,000 and we have expenses of 137,000.
So we're at
we
a
have a
negative.
loss of about $10,000.
And so
But
then,
that, go ahead.
oh, sorry, if we're proposing the 25,000 for the remainder of the year, where would that come from then? If that's already in the red.
Well, it would come from those reserves.
Okay. Okay. Then it would be something we'd have to make up next year with licenses. Thank you. Don't worry about it, Marianne, thanks.
Alder Lukens.
Thank you, Mayor Denny. Just a couple of quick questions so that I can be sure I'm understanding this correctly. It just occurred to me earlier this evening to think about the original resolution as far as, well, anyway, I'm just going to cut to the question. So the original resolution in 2012 was for one humane officer and multiple CSOs, correct? I guess I'm looking at it. Well, yeah, it said multiple, I guess, in the papers that I'm looking at. But so Weston pulled because they weren't getting the services. So my question is, and maybe for you, Chief Barnes, I don't know if you would, I guess, be the best one to answer this. So were the CSOs involved when Weston wasn't getting the services? Were the CSOs involved then when the humane officer was on light duty?
I can't speak to it in a definite sense. Historically, our CSOs are available to us during late spring into early fall. And the period of time where we were unable to provide services to them were mid to late fall last year through and into 2024. So there may have been a call or two that we had a CSO around and they responded there. I just can't speak to that specifically right now.
So that's one part of why they pulled, and the other was their merger, correct?
That's my understanding,
Yeah.
yes.
And then, so then when the humane officer was on light duty, then during that other time, no one was available to cover correctly, correct? That's what that's what it sounds
Well,
like
our
from what you said.
relationship with Everest Metro ended this spring.
Okay,
So regardless of the CSO's ability, they wouldn't have been responding to that.
yeah, okay. And then, so So then my other question is, because the first, so this was, maybe it was in 2013, I guess it was entered into. I don't know if you would be the one to answer this then, or one of the, I don't know if one of the alders that was originally on the, Alder McElhaney or Alder Rasmussen can answer this. So that's quite a long time, and what I had read in here was that, like, there was, an increased need or increased, you saw an increased maybe revenue or whatever, and then it dropped back off. So my understanding is, from reading through this, is that maybe, like, since 2020, in the last few years, things have really decreased more. Is that correct?
I'm unclear as to what you're asking.
I'm just
like
trying
which-
to understand. So I guess my biggest question is, what's the difference between, Alder Larson's, the amendment is for a full-time humane officer and two, CSOs or part-time CSOs. And that seems to me to be what the original was for. And so I guess I'm just trying to make sense in my head, like,
So
if the services really aren't needed now because that was for a larger area, or,
I think I understand, and I'll try and clarify it, at least through my words, which the gist of the amendment produced by Alder Larson maintains the status quo, with the exception that it requires animal control hours by CSOs outside of the months that we would normally have CSOs available. So most of our CSOs are college students. They would go back to school in September, October, November, December. Those would not be months that we would consistently have CSOs available. There are times that a CSO is a local student and still wants to get some hours and does stuff like that. So my understanding of the amendment, if passed, would be we would commit CSO hours year-round during every month to meet the hours that are indicated in that amendment.
okay. And so, I don't know if Alder's, I guess my biggest question, and you may not be able to answer this then, is I've heard that there was a decreased need because, Weston pulled out, and that I understand the original program was for a much larger area. So then, is this more than what is needed? So anyway, okay. Thank you. You answered my question. I'm just trying to make sense of it in my head, because I didn't realize some of that other before tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess just to clarify, I was in on this from the beginning, just like Becky was. The last thing this needs is more money and more service. The level of service we had, if it were being provided, was getting the job done. And so originally, and Alder McElhaney recalls this correctly, the goal was that this would be an enterprise fund which functions like a little business. It's got revenue and it's got expenses, but it becomes self-sustaining. And that was a promise that was made to the taxpayer, that in exchange for license revenue and fine revenue, that this would become self-sustaining and that it would not have continuous cyclical levy pressure. It never got to that point. It always was infused with cash from the bottom because it never made enough money on its own. Originally, licensing enforcement was supposed to start with the importing of vaccine data, rabies vaccine data from vet clinics. And then when those lists came in, the humane officer was to go out and get a hold of those property or those pet owners that had vaccinated but not licensed and say to them, now it's time to license. And when they didn't, there was to be a fine for that. That was not getting done. I've sat through meetings with 3 separate city clerks during the life of this program who've told me that that enforcement was never as robust as it needed to be and that we were forfeiting revenue for it. So this just isn't optimal. Like, we need to try something different. and to sustain and continue what we've been doing all along that isn't working is just foolish of us. Like, we need to move on. We need to at least try this plan that was proposed by the police department, because the people that have been doing the work this whole year would still be doing it, basically. So I think we need to try that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Tierney. And again, we're working on the amendment. Yep.
Chief Barnes, if you could put your roller skates on and come on up here again, please. Hi,
Hi,
I have one question for you.
I'll try and answer it.
Okay. If I'm understanding correctly, the CSOs that you have are the majority of the summer months, because most of these are students that are going back to school in the fall. So September through, I guess, the end of April is when you're lacking CSOs for
Right,
the
well-
most part.
We burn our CSO budget in those summer months because that's when we see the most need, where they can be as helpful as possible.
Sure. My concern or question is, if we go to the proposed new plan, are you going to have 2 dedicated CSOs year-round? Because if we're sending 2 to training and paying for training, then those 2 need to be our CSOs for longer than 4 months.
Sure. I mean, I don't have a magic 8 ball, but the proposal that is for 3 dedicated CSOs that are part-time year-round, not 2. So, and with that, these CSOs that you're used to seeing in the yellow shirts that ride around that are the college students, that's a very different job description than what we proposed in this proposal. And I think at times they were referred to as CSO2s or, I don't know, super CSOs. They would be a different pay structure. It would impact our recruiting. And our belief is that we would be able to recruit 3 quality individuals to provide that training to provide that service. Now, I will tell you that we're a great place to work. And sometimes people come on and they want to do one thing and they realize it's time to be a police officer because they're ingrained in what we're doing. And I wouldn't stop a great CSO2 that's doing a great job on code enforcement from becoming a police officer for us and filling that void. So, again, that's what our goal would be. We feel confident that we wouldn't propose that if we didn't think we could be successful with that. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but.
Well, I just don't want to see the city to continue to spend money to train people every 4 months, because, if this is going to be the answer, then I don't want to see it be a temporary answer.
Sure. That's our goal as well. And again, all I can tell you is we feel confident we'd be able to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I just don't want to be sitting here next year saying, we had 3 CSOs, and then 1 left here, 1 left here, 1 left here, so it went back on the police officers again. And my fear is that this is a temporary solution with a rotating staff. And we don't need a rotating staff in this position. If this is going to be the option that people go with, then it has to be an option where we have people that are dedicated. I know that there's always people that go, this isn't for me, once they've tried something, but we can't have a constant rotation in it throughout the year, and that is a huge concern for me.
I understand the assignment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
I took my name off because.
We've heard multiple times that this is not a one-person job, and it indeed is not a one-person job. And we have heard repeatedly about the lack of licensure fees that have been collected and so forth. If we had a full-time humane officer and 2 CSOs assisting that person, I do believe that it would allow us to increase those licensure fees and help make up for that deficit that we've been hearing about. So again, I repeat, I believe this should be a specialized position, and I think with adequate assistance and help, the city could achieve making up for those inadequate licensure fees. So again, I will support this amendment.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman. Okay. And Alder Larson, you turned yours off. Okay.
I
So-
did, Alder Tierney answered my questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are at a point, we're voting on the amendment, and just as a reminder, the amendment then, if it passes, it can pass by a simple majority. If it does pass, then that would require the main motion as amended to have a 2/3 majority. If it were to fail, then we would be back to the original main motion, which would require a simple majority. Did I get that right? All right. Seeing no further question. Oh, we have another question.
Sorry.
Alder Lugans.
It's just to clarify how we can vote. So if we could just repeat, if you could repeat if one is defeated or the other, when
Sure.
one can come up again, that's all. That part that you had that you had emailed us.
I'll turn it over to the city attorney, and we can
Yes,
put
I'm sorry, Mayor.
a woman's voice to this one and see if we,
Mayor Denny had it absolutely correct, but I'll repeat it. It is because the motion was made, the motion to amend the language was made before it was referred to the Finance Committee. I'd prefer that we vote on amending the language. And if it is amended, if you vote yes for the amendment, that will be added into the resolution then, the joint one to which we've added the finance recommendation piece. So then we'll have a joint resolution to take in what happened at finance on August 27th. We'll vote on that if the amended language is approved. So the amended language just takes a simple majority, as it always would. But once it's added into the related budget modification, and those are entered together into the amended resolution, you've got that extra piece which now requires a 2/3 vote or 8 of 11. And so if then the amended resolution in total with the related budget modification doesn't pass by 8 votes or more, then we're back to the original resolution.
I'm sorry, so my question was, if one or the other fails, when can it or cannot it not be brought up again? If a motion fails, you had that in.
If you get back to the original resolution, let's say you get, the amendment fails or the amended language fails, then we go back to the original resolution. No matter how we get there, if the original resolution is not adopted, then it fails, and we maintain the status quo unless and until someone exercises one of the 2 council rules under the code, and one is reconsideration. Once a motion is defeated, or a resolution or ordinance is defeated, it can be brought back in substantially the same form 30 days later, or someone who voted on the prevailing side could move to reconsider the vote at the next regular council meeting.
Okay.
They don't have to be used, but they're available.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Killian, did you have a question?
Clarify, if we vote for the amendment, it's going to be the amendment which you modified, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
As proposed and modified.
As proposed / modified and read in by,
The clerk. Yep, exactly.
all right, we are ready to vote on the amendment, simple majority required.
Okay, you may begin voting. Motion to amend the item fails 4-7.
Okay, so then that brings us back to the original resolution and the original motion. And I don't know who was the motion and second, if it matters at this point. I think we have it.
Tonight it was, okay, never mind. Larson and Rasmussen, you took at the beginning, but was that for the amendment?
That was for the amendment.
Okay, so who moved it back on August 19th?
It was Alder Lukens and Alder Rasmussen.
So a motion by Lukens, second by Rasmussen on the main motion And this would require a simple majority.
And just for a point of clarification, this is the original plan, full-time employee gone, CSOs replacing, budget neutral. This is the original plan we began with?
That would be correct. We
Okay.
need to, well, it's in the packet. So that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further comments on the main motion? I have light on by Martins.
Okay, since we're back to the main motion, I do support this. I think it's staff has worked a long time on this plan, starting with public health and safety, rolling through HR and not finance because it's budget neutral, which is a nice thing. It provides an extra level of service because with 3 CSO2 positions that were approved in HR, they would have the ability to work year-round and up to 60 hours a week so that they could have a flexible schedule to give evenings and weekend hours that we're lacking at this moment with the current humane officer plan. So I will be supporting the original resolution.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 7-4.
Thank you. And up next, we are going to move ahead one. We've got a consultant in the room. We'd like to get him up here. Phil from Ellers. File number 240907, resolution from Finance approved 5-0, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for. What's that?
I thought you said
No.
put them on there.
Oh, sorry.
No suspension?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, thank you. And establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $9.1 million general obligation promissory notes. And
Sorry, I have the wrong one.
okay.
There, this one.
Working the
This
clerk,
one.
we're
This
skipping
one.
around
Sorry,
here
sorry.
tonight. Phil, stand by, we'll get you. Okay, we got a motion from Mr. Neal. And a second from Rasmussen, and I have Alder Tierney first in the hopper.
The only thing that I have, and I discussed this with the clerk, is there is I think a typo right at the beginning of this. It says 9 billion, 9,100 million rather than 9,100,000. So I think we just need to probably correct that.
So can we take that as a scrivener's error? Do we need an amendment to strike that?
Where?
I'll issue a 9.1 billion. That'd be the largest ever for the
Nice
company
commission
history.
there, Dwight.
I'm going to have to vote no on that.
I advise they could do it either way. You could just note that it's clearly 9,100,000. That's what was on the agenda
The
as well, and
agenda
that it's a
okay.
typographical error,
Alrighty.
or you could take a motion in a second to amend it
And
to
is
the
what was approved
correct
at
amount.
finance as well.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Phil, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Usually, consultants sit in the back and you don't move us forward. I certainly appreciate it, Mayor. Thank you. This is probably a little later in the year than we typically are here. We have your capital borrowing for 2024. Many of the projects have already started, as you're probably aware, that are listed. This was part of your 24 budget. We are waiting kind of patiently for audit information, which is, for whatever reason, seems to be later and later in the years now that we receive them. So now that we have the audit information, we're bringing forward this capital borrowing. This is very similar to what you've done historically. Dollar amount changes always based on the number of projects that are outstanding that were as part of your budget process. We have in your packet a pre-sale report It looks like this, that I was going to take a few minutes to walk through with you tonight. The pre-sale report kind of lays out the deal as it pertains to the structure, as it pertains to the capital items to be financed, and then timing as well. Thank you. So as you can see under purpose, we have really 4 different purposes here. We have financing of the fire station land. We have the motor pool equipment replacement pieces. We have some street projects, then TID 8 and TID 10 projects as well that are being financed. These are notes, meaning you're going to finance these no longer than 10 years, and we have a separate structure for each one of these purposes that are shown in the exhibits you'll see in a little bit. But rest assured that we always are looking at the life of the asset and not making sure we're not financing anything for longer than the asset life. So you'll see a little bit different structure for each of those purposes. This will be these will not be bank qualified, which is not unusual for larger communities, meaning that there's some special bank treatment. If you are bank qualified, that just means you've issued $10 million or less in a calendar year. We will be seeking a rating here, as we always have. The city's rated AA3 with Moody's. We have a rating call scheduled already. So we'll be handling that on September 19th, assuming everything moves forward tonight. This will be what's called a parameter sale. We've done that the last number of years with the city. And the parameter sale just means you're not going to have me appear on a specific night. Rather, we picked a date, in this case, October 2nd, to sell the bonds. Notes, excuse me. And the reason for that is really 2 purposes. One, we can avoid Monday and Tuesday nights. Pretty much every municipality in the state of Wisconsin meets either Monday or Tuesday. So you compete with a lot of other municipalities if you sell on a Monday and Tuesday. The other is that we have the ability to be kind of flexible and move the sale if need be. So we have something significant happen in the market the day before, week before, we could pull the sale, delay the sale, and bring it forward when we think it's more advantageous for the city to get better rates. So we have that flexibility if we're not issuing debt on a specific date, but rather a parameter that allows us the flexibility to move it around. We have a significant event coming up in two months. A lot of things can change between now and then, so we want that flexibility. Market's been pretty stable, but we want that flexibility. The parameters are laid out on the top of the page as shown on the screen. The maximum amount to be borrowed, $9.1 million. We have some parameters in here that allow some flexibility for the bidders to set up and bid. Maximum interest rate, true interest cost, we call it at 4.5%. If you sold today, we'd expect you to be closer to 375 in that range. So we have a little room built in here. And then we also have the ability to move the maturities around to affect the impact of the tax rate. And we work very closely with Mary Ann to make sure that we have structured the debt in a way that fits within your budget, and we can avoid kind of peaks and valleys in your tax rate. We always look at refunding opportunities. We unfortunately are not at a point where the market enables us to refinance any of your existing obligations at this point in time. If you go down a page, you'll see that the next page, thank you. You'll see that we have a timeline that we have laid out. Again, September 10th today, you're giving us hopefully authorization to proceed. And that's what you're doing tonight. You're not approving it, but that'll come later. But you're giving us authorization to proceed. We've already started working on the official statement, which is a prospectus on the city that'll be mailed to different underwriters. We have the conference call with the Moody's Investor Service already scheduled. And then again, the sale would occur on October 2nd, and as long as you met all the parameters, they would be awarded on that date. And then we have a closing schedule for October 24th, that's when all the funds would be wired to the city, and you'd have the funds available to, one, reimburse yourself for costs previously incurred, and to pay for other project costs that were identified in this borrowing. So the next page, we lay out, as we always do, kind of what we call a base case. Where you are today, that's the base case, and what we're really drilling down to is what is the tax rate for debt service, and then showing what the impact is of adding a capital borrowing on top of that. So we here have the base case in the first exhibit. You can see that in 2024, you had about $1.26 per thousand. That was for your existing obligations. If you flip to the next page, here is where we have listed out all of the capital projects to be financed as part of this. And you can see we have the list that came from the city as part of your budget process. So all the projects to be financed are listed there, broken out by purpose again. If it's fire, streets, TID 8, TID 10, kind of laid out that way. The following page is the sizing structure. How we got to the $9.1 million is to finance all the projects that were identified, along with some issuance expense. The following page again is the allocation by purpose. So you'll see each one of these different funds will have a 10-year amortization, except for the motor pool, which will be a 5-year amortization, which will fit closely with the asset life that is being borrowed as part of those projects. And then the following page is your tax impact analysis. I mentioned $1.26 per thousand is where you were in 2024. Even with this capital borrowing, what we're projecting in 25 is to be right around that same dollar amount, $1.26 per thousand, and then having it drop off in 26, $1.22, $1.09, and 27. And what that does is enables us the ability to undertake future capital and, again, avoid those peaks and valleys in the tax rate. Last page is a bond chart that's really kind of showing you what's really occurred over the last 3 years. I'd like to eliminate the 21, 22 because it looks bad, yet, again, we're looking at 10-year financing around 375. So it's if you look at it over a 20-year period, it's still a very attractive rate. It's just not what we saw back in 21, 22 when rates were near zero at that point of 1.5%, 2%. So we have seen a bit of a bump up in rates. So again, tonight we're asking for authorization to have you adopt the parameters resolution, which will really get the ball started, the rating call, and then the parameter sales schedule for October 2nd.
Thank you. Any questions? Anything else to add?
No.
Seeing none?
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-2.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, back up to item file number 23-1109V. Resolution from Finance approved 5-0, approving a budget amendment recognizing the grant award of $498,482.08 for a Wisconsin DNR Urban Forestry Inflation Reduction Act grant for the City of Wausau tree planting and private ash mitigation project. And this requires a 2/3 vote, and we've got Jamie from Parks standing by to help us out with this one. Oh, I'd take a motion first. We have Mr. Martins with the motion, second by Hanky.
Okay.
Can Jamie
Do-
speak?
Do we have
Looks like
Jamie
she's-
standing by?
Yeah, it looks like she's on mute.
On mute or asleep? Oh, sorry, Jamie. Yeah.
I'm here.
Sorry.
I'm here if you have any questions. This is a grant that our city forester
applied for and what it's going to help with is the ash tree mitigation in our lower income areas of the city. They can apply for a grant and we can remove some private ash trees with that in order to help people get the ash trees that are hazardous out of their yards. It will also help with planting of those areas. We're going to partner with the Wausau School District as well as the Hmong American Center to get this into the community. But it will help with our ash tree mitigation.
It's budget match. Yeah, there's no match.
Okay. Alder Lukens.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, Jamie, to you and your department. This is very exciting. I was really happy to hear about the school district being involved and the Hmong American Center and just the community. So thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you, Director Polly. Good work, and this is a no match.
Right.
But
There's
it does
no local
require
share.
2/3
Yep.
because it's a budget mod, but there's no match for the city. So this is
Right.
this is one
So
of
it's
those
an increase to revenue and a corresponding increase to expense.
one of the good grants. Thank you, Jamie.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 11-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Up next, item 23-1109W from Finance. It's a resolution approving and adopting the budget modification for American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects for water meters. And this was approved 5-0 at Finance. Again, a 2/3 vote required. I have a motion from Watson, second from Lukens, and I have Alder Hanky.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to support this. I see that this went up against the solar array at the water plant, and this was chosen over the solar array. I think it needs to be done. I would just rather see the ARPA funds spent on the solar array. Thanks.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I know that at some point there was some discussion, at least internally, about perhaps alternative fund sources for the solar array. Have any been identified? Because it did have wide public support, and the task force worked tirelessly for months and months and months to come to consensus with my neighborhood, and they finally addressed all of those concerns. And then just hearing from Mr. Coldwell tonight, the future potential savings in operational costs at the new facility, that is not anything to sneeze at. So do we have any funding on the horizon to bring the solar array up if we don't do this?
Not that I'm aware of, Eric.
I mean, if there's a grant somewhere, fine then, but I hate to take this money and,
Nothing that, that's available at this time. I mean, there's potential that we'll apply for as we move forward. I think our intent is to move that through the budget process as well as an option. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, because when Eric and I looked, we couldn't quite figure out why we didn't put it to CIP
Right.
this year
Yeah.
at the same time that we were putting it through ARPA. So we have talked about, well, maybe we should reconvene CIP to consider this. And, obviously, there was going to be a shortfall even if this 800,000 was allocated, but then you would be making a recommendation to add it to the budget with the funding source being debt issuance for the entire amount of the shortfall,
For the array or the meters?
for the array.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was talking about the array.
Alder Lukens.
Thank you. I will just also echo those comments that in favor of the solar array. I know that they have worked long and hard on it. We've been addressing that in the Sustainability Committee, and I was really hoping those ARPA funds would be, applied to that. Thank you.
I have the Finance Director.
I
for
just
comment.
want to add one more, complication. I think the reallocation to the water meters wasn't necessarily a vote against the solar array. It was just looking at the financial situation and trying to do the right thing, because not only did we have that continued shortfall, but the other situation, time marches on, and we have to have a contract in place by December 31st of 2024 if ARPA dollars are allocated. And at this point now, with the complexities of the project, whether we would be able to actually get a contract on hand and signed by December 31st now was not necessarily a sure thing.
Correct.
And so I think that was the other reason why the water meters was put forward.
Thank you. I think that's important information I wasn't aware of, because we do have a spend down deadline that's looming. Right, thank you.
Alder Hanky.
Yeah, I was just going to add that just so everyone who is pushing for the solar array, this doesn't kill the solar array. We're just going to have to battle it out in the budget, and I'll be happy to battle.
That's good.
So
Yes, that's a very good point. I think it's probably the more on the whether we can spend it in time and commit it, and then it has to be spent, so the project would have to be done by the end of 26. Okay, Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. Well, I was in support of the solar array, and it bothers me that the solar array issue came to finance a month earlier than the water meter issue did. It should have really come, it came out of finance, and it should have come to the city council at the next meeting. It did not. Instead, the water meter issue came through, and now we have that in front of us today. I supported the water meter, but I was left puzzled, because I'm not quite sure what the direction of the city of Wausau is towards solar array. I think that it sort of got left off. I sense that it got left off of City Hall. I wonder exactly where we are going. I think to find the monies now for the solar array is going to be a big challenge. I think that as part of the report from the Solar Array Committee, I thought it was that there would be a variety of that we would be seeking a variety of different funding sources for that. I see that has sort of dried up. I think that it's a large issue for the budget to take it for 2025. We'll see. I'm puzzled again by the fact that the city is turning away from a strong endeavor for alternative energy. Several months ago, we passed the 2050 arrangement. I think that where exactly are we? Where are we with regard to alternative energy in this city? The Solar Array Task Force presented a plan. Well, that sort of didn't get very far. And I would like that, maybe it's the fact that this city council and city hall has no future for alternative energy. I think the community is seeking that, and I think that we should be attentive to the fact that alternative energy is with us. I'm curious to see how we're going to navigate the future of solar arrays at the water treatment plant, and how we're going to navigate alternative energy throughout our community. I'm not sure. Alderperson Henke voted against it because of or at least said he was going to vote against the proposal in front of us. But it bothers me that the work that the last 4 years of going to our community and seeking input, plans, a final report from our task force, and it seems to be idle, and that bothers me. I'm not sure how I'll vote on this resolution, but I would like the city to assure the citizens of the city of Wausau that that alternative energy, solar arrays are in a future. The Sustainability Committee earlier this evening said they wanted that. We'll see how the city council and the city proceeds. Thank you.
Alder Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question would be to the Mary Ann Grote is if this gets voted down and in favor of the solar array, where would the city look for the $800,000 for the water meter program?
We wouldn't really have a alternate source. I mean, at this point, the cash flow of the water utility does not look like it could support that type of expense. So we did not look for an alternative at this point.
Okay, because I notice, I see the importance of them both here. I mean, I see the importance of moving ahead with renewable energy on this, but I also see that, you know, through no fault of this council here, you know, or that, you know, our water meters have been neglected over the years to the point where, you know, people are complaining about their water bills when you've got water meters that aren't working. I know of one in my district where he said they're just billing me for whatever, the taxes and the fire rate or whatever they pay. He hasn't been paying for his water because his meter doesn't work. So it's a really a catch-22 situation here. Do we move forward or do we stay behind? Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Lukens.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman was very well said. I agree wholeheartedly. I also do think the water meters are important too. I agree with Alder Larson. So I actually on our neighborhood Facebook page not too long ago, a number of residents started just reporting after the last bills came out, like, my bill is the same as the previous month. So is mine, so is mine, so is mine. Not everyone, but then when this came up, it made a lot of sense to me. So that it was the meters. So I'm willing to vote in favor of this for the meters. But as Alder Hanke said, I wholeheartedly support the solar array. I have been contacted by a number of constituents who are very, very much in favor of it, as was my mentor and predecessor, Alder Peckham. So I know he worked hard on that too. And so I really, really hope that we can find money for that because as you know, the public comment by Jay Coldwell said it will definitely save money, and we need to look to the future. If anyone who pays attention to, you know, climate data, it is really important. So I will be supporting this, and I do very much support that. So I hope we can find the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Martins.
Okay, thank you. Alder Lukens, I'm glad you brought up Alder Peckham because this would definitely be a passion for his to see the solar array project moving forward. And I certainly do support the solar array project. I think it's worthy. It's a worthy endeavor. I think that it will save the utility money in the long run, and it's an investment we should make. The problem we have coming into the end of our ARPA allocation timeline is that we need to have contracts signed by the end of the year. And it's dicey if we could have that happen with the solar array project. If we could, if bids could be let in a timely enough manner that they could come in, and then after the bid was accepted, a contract signed by December 31st, then the solar array project could move forward with ARPA funding. But we're already midway through September, and that would, even with, with notice periods and the whole 9 yards, it's not gonna, that's almost a physical impossibility. I think, the solar project will live to see another day. I know there has to be funding available out there for it. There's still, federal money and whatnot, and utility money that I'm sure that could be investigated to find, how we can fund this thing. Probably not gonna, the solar array would not, make it into CIP for the 2025 budget, but most certainly this is a worthy project for CIP to look at for 2026. So we can start that process come next year, looking for funding for the solar array project. But moving on to the water meters, just to add a little bit of context here, the reason why we're looking at these two separate items in that, if you recall last month, we are using $1 million out of excess, I believe it's excess revenue that from 2023 to fund $1 million worth of water meter replacement for the utility. This ARPA allocation of $800,000 will add another $800K to the water meter replacement project. It's anticipated that in order to replace these approximately 7,500 meters that need to be replaced in the city, it will cost an estimated $2.2 million. The utility calculates that with using the $1.8 million combined from these two, different funds, we will be able to purchase enough meters to work the program, the replacement in an expedited fashion, so that as the new meters are recording accurate usage, the revenue that we're able to capture from that can be then used to fund the additional monies that are needed to replace the rest of the faulty meters. There is a bit of a lead time to getting these meters in-house. It takes months for the meters, but we can order them today. We get on the list, and then with the funding backed up against our order, meters will be coming in within the next year to 18 months, so we can continue on that process. So my feeling is voting yes for the water meters is not a vote no for solar, because we can we'll still find a way to get the solar array into the water utility. But voting yes for the meters tonight does help us stem the 17%, help stem that 17% unaccounted for water usage, and that is vital in in shoring up the shortfalls that we see in that utility. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Watson.
I was just wondering too, speaking of ARPA funds, does that tap what we have remaining?
So there still would be about $70,000 left. The committee tonight talked about allocating that for the balance of the firefighter positions, because currently it would not take us through 2025. So that will be brought before finance next meeting.
Okay. And then with the meters, the lead time is, it's not gonna impact signing the contract by the end of the year,
Correct.
even if we're on a wait list?
Yes, because the purchase order would be in effect.
Okay.
Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that solar array will get done. I'm just curious to see how, and I'll be anxious to see and how it does get done. Budget-wise, it takes the the stamina of this city council, certainly with the backing of the city of Wausau's citizens, that I think we desire this and we want the city to move in that direction. I'm curious to see how the city is going to indeed proceed to make sure that that indeed does get done. Thank you.
Thank you, and it was good work over a period of quite a while. I don't know if it was a full year or not. So the good news there, thanks to all of that team and Alder Gisman and Alder Henke leading that up, is that work is not perishable. So and it's unfortunate, it has the feel we're pitting one against the other, but that really shouldn't be the case. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but Alder Martins, did we rank these in the ARPA matrix?
They were, yes, both of these projects were ranked in the ARPA matrix. I saw that the solar array was in the packet, and I think that got a 62 ranking. I do not recall what the ranking was for the water meters, but I think it was like, yeah, I was going to say it was 70, 69, 70, give or take. So they were both within the realm of
Acceptable.
of acceptable of projects that we've approved.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none?
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-2.
Up next is file number 240906, resolution approving the vacation of right-of-way at 700 Grand Avenue for the Commonwealth Development and releasing obligation of the DOT for reimbursing city for the property purchase. Stand by once.
I think we were going to pull.
Without objection, we're going to pull that because I don't think we had the right number at finance, and we're going to bring that back. Okay? Pulled. I think we're up to suspending the rules for this next item, and that would be suspension of the rules under 6B, filing, and 12A, referral of resolutions, requires a 2/3 vote. Motion by Neal, second by Lugans.
You may begin voting. Alder McElhaney.
Batteries died? What's going on here?
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right, I'm looking, so we're going to bring Jeremy up here. Let's roll into item 231109U from Finance, resolution that was tonight. That's why we're suspending the rules. Resolution approving approval of a budget modification for fire department CPR devices. And that passed unanimously? 5-0 in Finance right before this meeting. Requires a 2/3 votes. Jeremy? Hold on, well, let's take the motion. We've got motion by Neal, second by Rasmussen. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Excuse me, I guess this is a budget modification request. We fell a little short with looking for grant money to purchase these new CPR devices. These devices will allow us to deploy more economically, quicker, easier device to use, as well as fit all size patients, where the devices we have right now struggle in that regard. This is also the devices that we have now. We learned a week ago that they're going to stop making replacement parts for the parts that we have in March of 2025. So this is great timing in that realm, as well as the fact that we're going to be able to use something that's going to supply our citizens and our patients better outcomes. So as we look for this money, we had a little shortfall of almost $25,000. with the help of the finance director, found the money in another account and looking for your approval to move forward with that budget modification in order to purchase these CPR devices.
Sorry. Thank you. Questions of Jeremy on that? Fire Chief Cobb? Anyone? Larson, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You say these things must be pretty old then if they're going to be quit making parts for them, correct?
They're not. These are, boy, I wish Jared was here. I think we've only had these for 4 to 5 years, maybe 6 at the tops. Is it 3? Okay, because you remembered the question. Okay, 3 years. And they were top of the line, and since then they've improved their product, which is why they're having such great success with the new product, is why they're going to suspend making parts on the last product, which is a little bulkier, a lot harder to deploy, as well as doesn't fit all size patients.
So I guess we could be looking forward to maybe doing this in another 3 years, because then in maybe 3 years these things will be obsolete as well.
I hope not.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions, comments?
You may begin voting. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, last item here before, well, we have got the closed session, so I'm looking for a motion to enter closed session and read the closed session. Motion from Tierney, second by Lukens. Would you mind reading Alder Tierney?
Pursuant to section 19, Pursuant to section 19.85 sub 1 sub G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved regarding a settlement offer from plaintiff in Marathon County case number 19CV162, Kenneth J. Stankowski, et al. Versus City of Wausau.
And that is seconded, and we don't?
And then I'll do a reverse roll call vote, so I'll start with Alder Hanky.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Tierney.
Aye.
Watson.
Aye.
Rasmussen.
Aye.
McElhaney. Gisselman.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Killian.
Aye.
Martins.
Aye.
Lukens.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0. I think so. Are you safe to drive?
I hope you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Did you mention?
I did not, but it's on the agenda.
Okay, this shouldn't take long, but we will reconvene for anyone interested. Unless you're involved.
Oh, okay. There's nothing in the packet.
Right now, it shouldn't be. Could some